Good morning. I'm Jenny Rae here with my co-host Namaan. It is Thursday, July 10th, and I want to say welcome to everyone who has never been here before. We are really excited about kicking off the pod this morning. Looking forward to being with you, Namaan. How you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's Thursday. It feels like Friday. The week after a holiday week's always kind of janky, you know? But it's been a good week and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
I lived in South Africa for a season, traveling back and forth from the US to do some work in their business community, and they had more public holidays than we did. And so it honestly felt like I was on vacation all the time. So I get it. I get it 100%. Looking on today, I have some M&A news that I think is interesting. As you probably know from my background, for those that are listening, I did a lot of deal work in M&A through Bain's private equity practice. And then since completing my time at Bain and moving on to private advisory work, I do a lot of M&A deals, a lot of, actually, I do a lot more sell side deals for people that are thinking about selling their companies. And I also have purchased some companies. So I love talking about these deals. And so if it's good with you, I'd love to just dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, amazing. So our focus today is going to be on news that broke pretty recently, and this is news that I think has a lot of layers to it. I've studied this industry for a couple of different reasons over the years. So here's the headline, right? Ferrero to buy cereal maker WK Kellogg for 3.1 billion. Kellogg shares jumped 30%. One of the first things that I thought was interesting about this is tying to yesterday's conversation about Meta and Ray-Ban. The share that Meta took in Ray-Ban was under 5% and also worth about $3 billion. So my first thought about this was $3 billion is not what it used to be, right? That seems like a pretty small deal. But it did feel like too small of a deal for the brand Kellogg. And so I was curious as I was looking through this if there was something that I was missing. And it jogged a memory for me of actually a business split that happened. And I didn't think that at the time the split made sense, but I'm getting a little bit more color into why it might have made sense. So by the way, you can tell from my ads where what season my family is in right now, right? We're in swim team season, so I'm getting all of these like Speedo swimwear ads. So anyhow, high level, right? Candy maker Ferrero is buying it for 3.1. WK Kellogg makes cereals such as Froot Loops and Frosted Flakes. They're what are considered in my household vacation cereals. So, when we go on vacation, we do things like Lucky Charms and Frosted Flakes. When we are in standard, weekdays, we do eggs, bacon, and the occasional Cheerios or Rice Krispies. So anyhow, I'm kind of interested, Naman, at the headline news from you, and then I think we should dive into some of the details.
Yeah, I think this is why you saw, Kellogg split into two companies. So they split into WK Kellogg and Kellanova. And Kellanova was kind of like the snack part of the company, and they've already been acquired by Mars. And so now, in hindsight, it's obvious one of the reasons for the split wasn't just, hey, we think we're going to be more valuable separate than we are apart. We think we're going to be able to really, focus on, operationalizing what we need to operationalize if we're apart, but we're also going to be more attractive acquisition targets. And so I think
Yeah.
that was one of the big impetuses for the split. And it, Ferrero's a private company, so we don't see it here. But one of the things I always notice when acquisition news is announced is that the acquired, their stock always jumps. Usually the share price of the acquirer drops. And I think that's just the market realizing and recognizing that most M&A activity isn't actually successful in the long run. So these deals are sexy, they make a lot of news, they're fun to talk about, but it takes a lot of work and intentionality on the back end to actually make them kind of long-term strategic holds. So I think this is a little bit of a different scenario because Ferrero is a privately held company. But kind of you just mentioning the share price and yesterday mentioning kind of the pop that Ray-Ban's parent company had, right? Meta didn't experience the same pop. And so it's just interesting to me the recognition that the market has that, hey, this is almost always really good for shareholders of the acquired company, not always great news for shareholders of the acquirer.
And of course, if you saw that kind of pop, you wouldn't see the same size. Ferrero is a lot larger than Kellogg is.
Hmm.
I don't know about you guys, but Nutella is like a point of contention in my household. I think it's just one of the most magical creations, and my kids think of it like peanut butter, and I don't think of it from a health perspective like peanut butter. But anyhow, it's kind of like, well, mom, it's apples and Nutella, like that's the same thing. But anyhow, we don't know what their numbers are, but we may have estimates here. Naman, I just wanted to poke on one of the things that you said though that I think is super
Hmm.
interesting here. From an M&A perspective, I mean, it seems like Kellogg's board was actually planning to stop operating functionally when they made the split, right? Like if you're most companies don't think from the sell side like that unless they are timing out and kind of trying to tap out of the market. But one of the things, my first question that I would ask here, and I want to know what your first question is. I don't know if it's actually answered in this version of the article, because I have two articles that I looked at about this morning. But one of the first questions that I had when I had this was, what is Ferrero's international distribution? Was it stronger than Kellogg's? Because I suspect that growth is slowed or slowing in the US markets, and growth is expanding and accelerating inside international markets. So because of their scale, you wouldn't see the same stock pop if it was traded, right? Because
100%.
Ferrero, right, this
I mean, they're seven
incrementality to
times
Ferrero is
larger.
going to be a tiny piece of what
Yeah.
they do. Directionally, though, that's what you'd look for, right? Did it go
Hmm.
up or did it go down? A little bit either
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So yeah, what about you? What would have been the first thing that you looked at from a metric standpoint to analyze this deal if you heard the news
So
today?
I would have looked at this, I would have eventually looked at it from a geographic perspective, but I would have looked at category growth first. And my first question would be, does Ferrero actually play in these categories? And we'll call it breakfast cereal. And, my instinct is they don't. And so I think that this is both category expansion and geographic expansion for Ferrero. It's not one or the other, it's both. But to me, I would have first looked at their existing portfolio and said, like, does this add like a new category to our portfolio? Yes or no? And then after that, take a look at kind of existing growth or growth rates in existing categories versus growth rates in this category, and just start to see if this is going to turbocharge some of that growth. My instinct, and again, Ferrero's privately held, but my instinct is that a lot of Ferrero's portfolio is chocolate candy confectionery, and you're seeing rising cocoa prices, you're seeing rising sugar prices around the world, and you're also seeing, consumer spending pull back on some, discretionary items. And so, I would think that the U.S. market is where you want to be, just because the consumer is strongest in the U.S. And I would also think that the spending on breakfast cereals is stickier than the spending on chocolate. And so that would be some of the analysis that I'd be first doing if I was looking at this deal.
I'll tell you what, I hadn't thought about it until you started talking about that. But one of the things that from, we've analyzed Hershey before, and I've followed Hershey. I grew up close to the Hershey headquarters. I've followed Hershey for a number of years, but even more recently, I've been noticing how one of the plays for Hershey is to expand into new categories and bring their old brand with them.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if one of the plays here is for Nutella Frosted Flakes and for Nutella, Nutella Fruit Loops. Just doesn't sound good to me, but right,
Maybe
Nutella.
Nutella loops.
Yeah, exactly. But right, I've been really fascinated by that, right? Reese's Puffs. And I think unless you've actually studied Hershey, you might not know intuitively that Reese's is their most valuable confectionery brand. But Ferrero has Ferrero Rocher. They also have the Nutella, which is, I think, from a brand perspective, even
Hmm.
stronger. So I could imagine. And then one of the other things that we looked at with Hershey was the shelf space for a deal like this, right? So
Yeah.
one of the things that they would buy with an acquirer is like how much space do they have on the
Yeah.
shelf, and with an acquisition when they were the acquirer. So if they are thinking about this, they're potentially thinking about maybe even reallocating that share towards something that would be a little bit more valuable to them.
I think you're absolutely right. One of the things they're buying here is existing retailer relationships and a distribution system that's well set up in the United States.
Mhm.
And so now you can move like additional product or additional variations of product through that already existing distribution system. I think that was a big impetus for this move.
Well, one of the things that we often don't know when we're looking at a deal like this is what other categories are that the headlines don't talk about, right? We know that Kellogg might make Frosted Flakes, but we don't know what else they make. We know that Ferrero may make Ferrero Rocher and Nutella, but they also make other things. That would be the final thing that I would look at before
Hmm.
taking a look at the details that are in this article. But I think we should dive into it. Right, so the deal is valued at about 3.1 billion immediately in pre-market trading. So markets have just opened now, but soared 30% in pre-market trading on the announcement. Excluding that, they've been down 2% this year, right? So this is the big news for the company this year. One of the reasons why the timing is right now is look at this, right? The market value of the company is down about $1.5 billion. So this doesn't look like Ferrero is a good deal maker. Naman. What do you think went on here in the back end?
I mean, one of my rules is never catch a falling knife. And so when you look at what's happening here, it kind of looks like Ferrero's catching a falling knife. I don't necessarily look for discounts in terms of price. I look for discounts in terms of value. And so we haven't dug into Kellogg's business. We're just reacting to this news in real time. But there has to be a reason that, the company's market value is down to $1.5 billion. And you really you or your strategy team or your bankers have made some kind of case that there are so many synergies available to you on the back end that this is a worthwhile deal. My default view of almost all M&A activity is that I'm skeptical, because most deals fail. And so, yeah, my default's no, and you have to get me to yes, because most deals are made not for market or category leaders. Now, Kellogg's got a great brand, but it seems like it's got a better brand than it has a business.
Well, I think this is super interesting, right? They talked about the Kellogg seeking to focus more on its growing its snack business. I've definitely seen that in work that I've done in the industry, that snacks are growing faster than chocolate, faster than cereal. So divesting
Yep.
from this sleepy cereal category, I honestly don't know if they even expected to sell this to anybody. So it probably had to hit the right price in order to do that. But you see this Kellanova deal in kind of comparison, $36 billion from Mars. Hasn't closed yet, though. So there's consolidation in the industry. I would imagine that this is becoming a focus of regulatory activity as well. Because even though you have diversified brands, you only have a few owners left in the market. And
Hmm.
you have these upstarts inside the market. You've talked a little bit about the share of new growth in the market. I think you see that really aggressively in snacks, but you don't see that in cereals. So there is actually an advantage of buying something that is already in play. Right? Like when's the last time that you thought like, wow, that new cereal by that new maker is a player in the market? But I just bought Dots pretzels, right, this week, and Dots wasn't a player on the scene just a few years ago. So in the snack category, there is more fragmentation and also more opportunity for upstarts to join the market.
Hmm.
But I think this is also really interesting. Look at what else they've bought, right? Family-owned company, snapped up Nestle's U.S. candy business and Halo Top owner Wells Enterprises, amongst other U.S. businesses. So are they just buying it, what they can, or do they have a strategy across these, do you think?
Well, I mean, I would hope they have a strategy. I haven't examined the other acquisitions. I know they own, so down here in Texas, a big ice cream brand is Bluebell. And so they've actually acquired Bluebell as well. So they're not just going for these kind of large nationally known brands, but they look like they've got a more kind of niche strategy as well. Like Halo Top is like a premium. Is it an ice cream or an ice cream alternative? I don't even
I was
know.
going to ask you if you've had it, Naman. I was
Yeah.
going to because I know that you're pretty loyal to Bluebell, but I also don't know how adventurous you are in the category. So it's a frozen dessert, but I don't actually know if it's ice cream or not. But it
Okay.
has like kind of colorful packaging, and I have never had it. Maybe I'm their new target customer, but
Right. I've never had it either, but I know the packaging. So the
mhm.
branding is on point. I notice it in the freezer if I'm walking by.
Is it though? If
So,
you haven't ever bought it,
well, I mean, I think before I buy it, I got to know about it. So at least
maybe.
that's half the battle. And so, yeah, like that seems like a kind of a niche brand. Bluebell also niche brand. And so it looks like they're diversifying their portfolio not just across categories, but maybe across kind of mature and upstart lines of business as well, right? Cereal is like a very slowly dying business from what it looks like from the outside. But like it's still gonna hopefully kind of generate cash flow for you for years and years and years and years. It's not disappearing tomorrow. And so you can maybe use some of the cash that cereal is spewing to grow faster in some of these other categories that might be a part of the strategy.
I would actually also be interested in looking at manufacturing capacity. If they have excess, that could be something that you're buying immediately. One of the things that you
Fair.
can see here, right, is that you have this North American buying spree. But one of the things that is more difficult to set up, it's not more difficult necessarily than other places, but it's just difficult in general to set up is manufacturing capacity. And so if the cereal brand is slowly declining and they have increasing capacity in their plants, you could make a snack bar or a breakfast bar or and other things that kind of Kellogg is currently doing, but you could maybe re
Mhm.
jig some of those categories.
Well, they've been
I
on
just
this buying. Oh, I'm
oh,
sorry. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go
No,
ahead.
I was just gonna say they've been on this buying spree for years, but I wonder if the threat of tariffs is now kind of spurring some of this as well. Because you're a European-based company, a lot of your manufacturing is probably set up in Europe, and so you're importing Nutella, you're importing Ferrero Rocher. Like the point about manufacturing capacity is well taken, and the threat of tariffs might have actually spurred this deal to move forward now, instead of Ferrero waiting another 6 months or a year. If they need U.S. manufacturing capacity today, I think that's a good point that I hadn't thought of.
The last thing that I just want to say here is kind of talking about what I had, right? I didn't see this news. This would have been fun for us to cover. We should probably do a live test
A little
of
taste
these
test.
new flavors. Yeah, with Halo Top now. Right here are all the Ferrero brands, and we're testing the ones that we've never had before. But peanut Nutella, I don't know how I feel about this actually. And Dr. Pepper Tic Tacs. But I think that's talking exactly to what we were saying before, right? If you have in category innovation with flavor profiles and you're expanding the growth inside those categories, there's an appropriate pace. I'm not a snacks expert, but there's an appropriate pace of new product launches that do two things. They bring new revenue or new participants to the game, but they also bring revived interest in your core products because you might see peanut Nutella and
Hmm.
be like, oh, I'm not gonna have that, but actually Nutella sounds good to me. It's kind of a way of like cross marketing and
Yeah.
maintaining brand presence across it. But yeah, peanut Nutella does not immediately pop for me, but maybe there's some other options in breakfast cereal that would. Dr.
And those,
Pepper Frosted Flakes. I don't know. Maybe that's
I
better
don't
than
know.
Nutella Frosted
I think
Flakes.
those would play in Texas. I'll tell you that much. But those kind of collaborations aren't just revenue synergies; they're cost synergies as well. So they drive incremental revenue, hopefully across not just the new product, but across the legacy product as well. But you're also saving in terms of streamlined R&D, streamlined marketing, and so like I'm thinking that Ferrero has run the numbers and done the analysis, and they're thinking that they can have their cake and eat it too, and achieve both revenue and cost synergies coming out of this deal.
I think so as well. Well, it'll be interesting to study. You guys should probably go eat some of both Kellogg and Ferrero's products today, just from a customer study perspective, right? Get yourself in there. This is kind of one of those things we were talking about the meta glasses yesterday, walking through the stores and having things pop up at you. That's kind of how I feel already. I don't even need meta glasses to do it, but I walk through a grocery store and I don't think, what is this price and will my family eat it only? I think, what did it take to get this here? What's happening with commodity prices in these sectors? It's disruptive in my shopping habits because I think through all of the kind of associated lines of reasoning that go along with each one of those products. But I think that's one of the times that I knew that I was starting to get it. I don't think you ever quite master it in terms of business acumen, but I was starting to connect the dots. Was when I realized that my normally kind of standard behavior at a McDonald's or at a grocery store or on a car lot was different because of what I understood about the way that the business operated. So hopefully you'll find that to be an advantage both in your business life and also just in your work conversations in general. Naman, anything you want to tag on before we sign off?
No, I'm hungry,
All
so I
right,
think I think we should sign off and go get some cereal.
let's go. Have a great day, everybody.